Hey guys, I'm Codyjoe and today we're going to show you how we set up our Zoo Med Paludarium. First you'll want to start with a clean glass terrarium. Next you'll want to dry fit everything in the tank to see how you want it to look. And also if you're going to do a waterfall, you want to figure out kind of where your water is going to run so that it doesn't splash towards the glass. So now I've kind of figured out a general base of where I want to start with the tank. And first I've actually used 100% silicone and I've siliconed all the wood in place. And then now I'm spray foaming. So this way if the spray foam decides that it wants to break away from the glass, it's going to be held on by those pieces of wood that are actually siliconed directly to the glass. And when you're doing your spray foaming, don't try and make it look a certain way. It's just going to change as it expands. So just worry about getting the whole thing covered and then we can carve it once it's dried. Here I let it dry a little bit and I'm just kind of carving out a notch, and then this way it's easier for me to place in a branch without it falling over. And then you'll see once I get it in, basically we'll just spray foam around everything to hold it in place. So you can see here when we started with glass, our first and our second layer of spray foam. Once it's dried overnight, we usually let it just dry overnight, and then by morning it's hard and fully expanded. And then you can take anything like a razor blade or just a simple steak knife, and then you'll carve the foam to get a look that you want. See here we're just kind of carving away, trying to get all the shiny rounded bits off for a more natural kind of rock feel. You can see here we've got it all carved down. It's starting to come together a little bit more now. Our next step is going to be, we're going to use 100% silicone, and we're going to do a thick layer over the entire background, and then that's what we'll stick our substrate to. See here we're using a caulking gun for this. On this particular terrarium we used about 2.5 tubes of silicone, so it does take a lot. And we'll just cover the whole thing. I like to lace it first, and then I'll use a rubber glove and I'll just spread the whole thing until it's completely coated. For this one I did decide not to coat the bottom half of the background that's going to be underwater, because later on, once it starts to get a little bit of algae and stuff on it, that raw carved spray foam is just going to look like rock under the water, whereas all the stuff up top is going to have the substrate, and then I can grow mosses and plants from that. So when using a substrate for your background, you're just going to want to find something large and dry. You don't want to have any moisture in it, otherwise it won't stick to the silicone. Getting a nice mixture. Now you can coat the entire background. You want a lot extra on there and you can just smack that off afterwards. So I'll go through, cover it, and you really want to push it deep into that layer of silicone. That way once it's dry, it won't actually just rub off of the silicone. Here we are, just kind of knocking all the loose debris off the background. Then you just take a razor blade and clean up your glass, get it looking smooth. Alright, now we're ready to move it onto our stand so that we can start planting it. Alright, now that the tank is in place, I'm just going to take the plants that I'm working with, and same thing, I'm going to get a general idea of where I want everything to go. And then next what I'm going to do is I'm actually drilling holes through some of the branches, and then that way I can grow the plants right out of the branch. Just dry fitting in a shelf for some more plants. Next what I like to do is I like to stuff all my branches and everything with moss, and then that way any of the plants that I have growing off of the branches, they're always going to have moisture from the moss. So just play with it, see what fits where. Down the line too, you might find some plants don't grow as well in a particular spot, so you can move them after a few weeks or a month of growth just to see where they do best. Alright, now we're starting to get a general feel for how the tank's going to look, so we'll clean out the bottom. And now we can hook up our pump. For this we're just using a small aquascape pump. Now I'm just wrapping the pump cord with bendy vines just to help disguise it a little bit better. And here we're ready for rock in the bottom. Now we're going to go for a basic look just with some larger rocks and gravel. And on this one we use Zoo Med's UVB plus LED light. You can see it lights it up really nice all the way down to the water portion. Now it's time to test fill it. And you can see we went through a few jugs. We used reverse osmosis water, and then we added our tank buster to help cycle the tank a little bit faster. You can see now where we use that tube in our background, this is where the water is going to wind up coming out in the top corner. So it'll run down and that moss will soak it up, and then that's what's going to help keep the plants watered. You can see here, once I've turned on the water and I know where it's going to go, I've started planting some live moss on the background there. Now you notice for the first day or two the water is going to be fairly cloudy, so we'll usually wait for that to clear out, change it a couple times before we decide to add any fish. So that was our paludarium build. If this is something that interests you, we carry all the supplies in store, and make sure to stay tuned for an update on who goes in this terrarium.